More on the adjusted Chinese tariffs and the state of the U.S.-China trade war. Let me turn to Economist Anthony Chan. Anthony, let me begin with these adjusted tariffs. Do they have any links to this trade war and trying to put a pause on things?
Well, I think it certainly is a step in the right direction. We know, of course, that the United States did postpone some tariffs of its own, and now, of course, the Chinese reducing some of those tariffs. So I think it's important that they continue to move in that direction, because in a period of heightened trade tensions, what you see is both countries try to decouple from each other. But you got to remember that those are the two largest economies in the world, the U.S. and China, and it's hard to believe that an efficient outcome would be a decoupling from each other. Rather, more cooperation and more engagement with each other is the way to generate more efficiency. And I think both parties realize that, and they're at least moving in the direction of trying to ease those tensions.
Anthony, another step in the right direction, if you will, is the signing of this Phase 1 trade agreement scheduled for January 15th, according to U.S. President Donald Trump. Certainly a step in the right direction, but many issues are still unresolved, aren't they?
I think you're right. Certainly this Phase 1 trade deal really attacks a lot of the easier issues, but make no mistake about it. We are, in fact, also seeing in this agreement, even though we don't have concrete evidence of it, that they are, in fact, moving in the direction of at least some of the tough issues. The technology transfers, the IP protection, all of those are going to be touched to some extent by this agreement. Not a complete resolution, that will come later on, but again, it gives credence to the view that both sides are certainly trying to engage each other and reduce those trade tensions, which is the right way to go.
And how unusual is it that we don't know the specifics of this Phase 1 trade agreement? What are the terms exactly here?
Well, I don't think it's that unusual. You've heard from Washington that right now the agreements have to be put on paper. They have to be properly translated. I think that both sides have given us enough information that we have at least a general idea of what's going on. We know there are going to be much more purchases by the Chinese over the next couple of years. We've heard some numbers as high as 200 billion increase in purchases. Part of that is going to be manufactured goods. Part of it, of course, is going to be agricultural goods. So it's not a complete secret. The exact details, of course, will come once the complete translation takes place. And, of course, maybe some more behind-the-scenes negotiation might be taking place at the same time. But I think that both sides at least have a broad or general agreement that they are very, very close to dotting all the T's and getting everything on paper.
And since this trade war began more than 20 months ago, the U.S. has raised import tariffs on more than two-thirds of consumer goods imported from China. Are those tariffs going to stay in place for now?
My suspicion is that that's going to be part of the negotiation, just like we've seen a suspension of tariffs on the U.S. side, a reduction on the Chinese side. As we move into future phases of these trade negotiations, my suspicion is that these tariffs will also be phased back as we see more progress coming from both sides. And
what do you make of President Trump's tweet that at some point he will be going to China to continue the negotiations, assuming Phase 2? Is there a sense all this can be finalized before U.S. elections in November?
I think it's too early to really come to that conclusion, but certainly that was one of the most optimistic parts of the statements that came out of the president. We, of course, know that these things are fluid, and sometimes we hear great things, and then we take one step forward, and then sometimes we take two steps backwards. But the fact that the president on national television went on record as saying that he's prepared to go to Beijing is a clear sign that the U.S. is serious about these negotiations. My hope and expectation is that that's the message from both sides. We have not heard that kind of language from the Chinese, but I suspect that behind the scenes it's probably a similar language or a similar feeling. Otherwise, the U.S. would not have made that statement.
All right, we'll leave it there. Anthony Chan, and a Happy New Year to you. Thank you.